Join us on a special journey through the hidden stories of history. What's stirring in Korea? Focusing on AI, bio, climate, defense, and economy. We highlight the various efforts and innovations aiming for a better future, where small steps signal new possibilities. Vibe in Action K Initiative presents the future moment that we are currently passing through. Explore the charm of K-beauty, beauty on and off. We take to the streets to hear about daily beauty routines, get hands-on experience, and share honest reviews. A lively K-beauty expedition for both newbies and pros. Learn and experience K-beauty with two idol stars on a mission to find their own styles.
Introducing Korean broadcast content that you won't be able to stop watching. For weary modern souls, Dr. Romantic, the quirky genius doctor of Puldam Hospital, prescribes heartwarming tales of humanity. A couple together for 7 years sees their rose-tinted glasses shatter. Can they keep their relationship alive? Discover the raw stories of youth, work, and love. Beyond what social media can show, experience the vibrant Korea through its hidden gems. Mama, the ultimate K-pop festival for global fans. Find your star in a feast of trendy music and electrifying performances. Now, the whole world enjoys it together.
A U.S.-Iran agreement to extend the ceasefire between the two countries has reportedly been signed and is now in effect, days ahead of a planned in-person ceremony in Switzerland. Under the 14-point deal, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, in exchange for sanctions relief and a $300 billion reconstruction fund. The U.S. Federal Reserve has kept interest rates steady, but signaled a more hawkish outlook, with 9 Fed members indicating they expect rates to be raised before the end of the year. The move sent stocks lower and boosted the U.S. dollar against major currencies. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has wrapped up his 10-day trip to Europe. Before returning home, he joined world leaders for talks on global economic imbalances and briefly met with U.S. President Donald Trump and discussed efforts to maintain peace on the Korean Peninsula. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. The United States and Iran have reportedly signed a ceasefire deal ahead of schedule, opening a 60-day window for nuclear talks while restoring shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
The United States and Iran appear to have inched closer to implementing their ceasefire agreement after both sides remotely signed a memorandum of understanding aimed at ending the conflict and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. According to US officials cited by Axios, President Donald Trump signed the document on Wednesday, days ahead of a planned in-person ceremony in Switzerland. Earlier on Wednesday, the Trump administration released a full text of the 14-point memorandum agreed by Washington and Tehran, declaring an immediate and permanent end to military operations, including in Lebanon. The US will begin lifting its maritime blockade immediately, while Iran will work to restore the free movement of commercial vessels through the critical Strait of Hormuz and return shipping levels to normal. Iran will remove mines and coordinate with Gulf states on the future management of the waterway. The two sides also agreed to a 60-day negotiating period aimed at reaching a broader agreement on Iran's nuclear program. Tehran also reaffirmed that it will not develop nuclear weapons, while both sides agreed to negotiate the future of Iran's enriched uranium stockpile under the oversight of the International Atomic Energy Agency. In return, Washington is offering significant economic incentives, including sanctions relief, waivers for Iranian oil exports, and a proposed reconstruction and development package worth at least $300 billion. Speaking in France after the agreement was unveiled, Trump made clear that any economic benefits would depend on Iranian compliance. He warned that if Tehran fails to honour the agreement or refuses to reach a final nuclear settlement, Washington could resume military action.
And it's a memorandum of understanding. If it doesn't get done in 60 days, that's all right. We go back to bombing. You know, I don't want to do that because it's so good. But we might have to, because we're never going to let them have a nuclear weapon.
Trump said the deal also sidesteps a catastrophe for the global economy and renewed turmoil in energy markets. The focus now shifts to Switzerland, where US and Iranian negotiators are expected to begin talks on a comprehensive agreement covering Iran's nuclear program, sanctions relief, and regional security issues. Young, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve left interest rates unchanged but signaled a more hawkish outlook, with several policymakers expecting rates to move higher before the end of the year. The prospect of tighter monetary policy rattled financial markets, sending stocks lower, Treasury yields higher, and boosting the U.S. dollar. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
The U.S. Federal Reserve on Wednesday left its benchmark interest rate unchanged at 3.5 to 3.75%, marking its fourth consecutive meeting without a rate move, and its first policy decision under new chair Kevin Warsh. The Federal Open Market Committee unanimously voted to keep rates steady as policymakers assessed the economic impact of the ongoing U.S.-Israeli war against Iran and a recent surge in inflation.
As you saw a few moments ago, the committee decided to maintain the target range for the Fed funds rate at 3.5% to 3.75% in support of the Fed's dual mandate. Economic activity is expanding at a solid pace, despite elevated uncertainty that owes in part to the conflict in the Middle East.
While the Fed held rates steady for now, its latest projections signaled a more hawkish outlook. The median forecast indicates that the federal funds rate will end the year at 3.8%, higher than the 3.4% projected in March. In addition, 9 of the 19 Fed officials indicated they expect interest rates to be higher by the end of the year. Warsh did not submit a projection in the Fed's closely watched dot plot. Wall Street on Wednesday reacted negatively to the prospect of tighter monetary policy. U.S. stocks closed sharply lower, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average falling 0.97%. The S&P 500 dropped 1.21%, while the Nasdaq Composite lost 1.34%. Treasury yields moved higher as investors increased their bets on a rate hike later this year. The yield on the 2-year Treasury note jumped 17 basis points to 4.21%, while the benchmark 10-year yield rose to 4.499%. The stronger rate outlook also boosted the U.S. dollar. The dollar index, which tracks the greenback against 6 major currencies, climbed 0.9% to 100.45. The Fed's latest decision suggests policymakers remain cautious about inflation risks, while markets are increasingly preparing for the possibility of higher borrowing costs in the months ahead. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung has just returned to Korea after attending this year's G7 summit in France. On Wednesday, he joined world leaders for discussions on global economic imbalances, sustainable growth, and artificial intelligence. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yu-jin has a wrap-up.
The final day of this year's G7 summit began with the working session on reviving a balanced, shared, and sustainable economic growth for all. Speaking at Wednesday's session, President Lee Jae-myung said global economic imbalances should be tackled through dialogue and solidarity rather than blame. He also called for a stronger cooperation to strengthen the resilience of global energy supply chains as the war in the Middle East has fueled concerns over oil supplies and inflation.
President Lee proposed that energy importing countries, particularly those in the Asia-Pacific region, move beyond responding individually and strengthen practical cooperation through information sharing, early warning systems, emergency coordination, and efforts to stabilize oil and petroleum product supply chains.
The session was followed by a working lunch where world leaders and tech giants discussed artificial intelligence. President Lee emphasized the importance of narrowing the global AI divide while ensuring AI remains safe, transparent, and accountable. Korea endorsed 7 of the 8 documents adopted during the 2-day meeting of the G7 members and 5 invited countries. Leading up to the G7, attention was on whether President Lee would hold a bilateral meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump on the sidelines. Although no official summit took place, the Blue House said on Wednesday that the two leaders exchanged views on the Korea-U.S. alliance and the Korean Peninsula over Tuesday's gala dinner.
President Trump reaffirmed his strong commitment to playing whatever role is necessary to advance peace on the Korean Peninsula and said he would remain in close communication with President Lee on the matter.
Posting a photo of himself with Trump on X, Lee wrote that the two had a candid 90-minute discussion that produced meaningful progress. He added that President Trump had invited him and First Lady Kim Hae-kyung to play golf. After returning to Korea on Thursday, President Lee is expected to shift his focus back to domestic affairs. On Friday, he will chair a meeting with his top aides to review the country's summer emergency preparedness. 송유진, Arirang News.
And President Lee Jae-myung also held his first summit with Kenyan President Ruto on the sidelines of the G7 summit. The two leaders agreed on Wednesday to deepen cooperation in economic development, infrastructure, and people-to-people exchanges. President Ruto praised Korea's rapid rise to an advanced economy, saying Kenya hopes to learn from Korea's experience. He replied that Korea stands ready to be a reliable partner in Kenya's development. Both countries attended this year's G7 summit as invited partners. U.S. President Donald Trump's nominee for ambassador to Korea, Michelle Steele, has been confirmed by the U.S. Senate. The Senate approved her nomination on Wednesday local time by a vote of 55 to 39. Born in Seoul in 1955, Steele immigrated to the United States with her family in 1975 and built a political career in California. She has served on the State Board of Equalization and later as a Republican member of the House of Representatives from 2021 until last year. Her confirmation comes just 2 months after Trump nominated her for the post in April. Once she arrives in Seoul, Steele will become the second Korean American to serve as U.S. ambassador to South Korea after Sung Kim. The position has remained vacant since former Ambassador Philip Goldberg departed in January 2025. The U.S. Congress is pushing a bill that would allow U.S. allies to build non-combat U.S. Navy vessels in their own countries. The Senate Armed Services Committee has reportedly included a provision in the recently approved National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2027 that would permit up to 2 bulk fuel tankers or strategic transport ships to be procured from foreign shipyards. This is expected to permit the overseas construction of non-combat vessels, but the construction would need to align with U.S. national security interests, and the contracting companies would need to make corresponding investments in the U.S. shipbuilding and maritime sectors. The bill will be finalized if it passes both the House and Senate and is signed by the President. SK hynix announced Thursday that it has supplied samples of its next-generation high-bandwidth memory to major clients. Compared to the previous generation, the new 12-layer HBM4E chip offers upgraded performance and over 20% more energy efficiency. To tackle overheating issues in high-performance computing, the tech giant used an advanced packaging process, allowing the chip to reach a 48 GB capacity while cutting thermal resistance by 17%. SK hynix Chief Development Officer An Hyun emphasized that the latest product lays the groundwork to continuously lead AI innovation, adding that the company will solidify its tech leadership as a full-stack AI memory creator. And Korea is no longer just a culture to view online, with the Korean wave making it something they can now experience firsthand. From K-food and K-beauty to K-pop, one event in Paris is showcasing what Korea has to offer. Our culture correspondent Park Gun-woo reports.
To get a bowl of Korean ramen and tteokbokki, you need to join a long queue in France. At least that's the case this week at K-Expo, being held as Korea and France celebrate 140 years of diplomatic ties. One of the fastest ways to understand a culture is through its food, and here at the K-Expo, people just don't see Korea, they taste it. From instant tteokbokki, spicy ramen, to seafood specialties from Korea's coastlines, this food zone is bringing Korean flavors straight to Paris.
We can experience really, I think, the whole culture. I feel like there's more and more exhibitions and fair about Korea, mostly in Paris, but maybe it should be not only in Paris.
Demand was so high that some food booths ran out of products hours before closing time. At the beauty zone, visitors lined up to try Korean skincare products and receive personalized consultations.
If I wake up tomorrow and my skin feels good, I will try to find the product or a similar one. There's a lot of shop in Paris, so it's really easy to find the K-beauty products here.
The energy continued in the evening with the K-pop concert featuring 6 acts, including Monsta X and NCT Wish, drawing thousands of fans. 82 Major also held a mini fan meeting, giving fans a chance to meet the group up close.
I tried my chance to go to the fan sign, but sadly I wasn't selected. So I just came here to see them because even though I wasn't chosen since I really like them a lot. I just seeing them is already a lot for me.
For organizers, the event is about creating stronger cultural ties between the two countries.
I hope this serves as an opportunity for young people in France to gain a deeper understanding of Korean culture beyond what they've seen so far. As the government and private sector continue to expand exchanges, I believe that by the time we celebrate the 150th anniversary, Korea and France will feel less like distant countries and more like close neighbours.
The cultural exchange is also generating business opportunities. Organizers have set a business consultation target of $400 million, connecting Korean companies with European buyers and turning cultural interest into economic opportunity. Business meetings continue through Friday as Korea looks to further expand the global reach of K-culture into business partnerships. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News, Paris.
Efforts are underway to list Asia's shared lacquer culture as UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. Experts from 8 Asian nations have gathered in South Korea to map out a joint nomination, highlighting Wonju as a key heritage site. Our culture correspondent Chung Il-im takes us there.
A craftsman carefully scores the bark of an onnamu or lacquer tree, and milky white sap slowly emerges. Visitors to this grove in Wonju, Gangwon-do Province gather round as the liquid is collected into a bamboo case. Known as ochil or lacquer, this natural coating has been used for centuries across Asia to protect and beautify wood. And Wonju is home to Korea's only domestic lacquer production site. So it is here at Wonju Lacquer Culture Center where masters of various crafts demonstrate techniques passed down through generations, from refining raw sap to creating colorful artworks.
Raw lacquer is the pure sap extracted directly from the tree, used without heavy processing. Because it is harvested only here in Wonju in very limited amounts, it is extremely rare and precious. Its charm is how it enhances the wood. Once applied, it brings the natural grain to life, preserving its raw beauty.
Even after more than 40 years, it's still fascinating to watch each pattern come together piece by piece. Without that feeling, I wouldn't still be doing this. What keeps me going is persistence. And I've always felt a responsibility to carry on Korea's traditions.
This may look like thread, but it's actually paper-thin abalone shells. Under a Korean technique named geuneumjil, artisans cut and place each piece into a groove and then seal it with lacquer, and every line takes absolute precision. The number of artisans is declining. Younger generations are showing less interest in inheriting the craft, and raw materials are becoming increasingly scarce. Korea and 7 other Asian countries, including China, Japan, and Vietnam, are pushing for a joint UNESCO inscription for lacquer culture, aiming to preserve the shared heritage.
I'm simply impressed by the quality and dedication of the masters you have, and the kind of investment the government is making to promote lacquer culture, not only as a national treasure, national heritage, but also a collective heritage from different countries in Asia. Wonderful effort that the Korea has put forward, and UNESCO is very much appreciating it.
Participating countries plan to conduct joint research and prepare a multinational domination document over the next 2 years, with the goal of submitting a joint application to UNESCO in 2029. 정혜림, Arirang News, 원주.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces voter anger heading into an election this autumn as the interim U.S. deal with Iran ended the war long before Israel's goals were achieved. Netanyahu confirmed this week he will run again in an election that must be called by October. Opinion polls put his right-wing coalition on course to lose. President Trump chose to end the wars in Iran and Lebanon before Israel achieved lasting victories. Netanyahu also faces corruption charges and criticism over the security failings of the October 2023 Hamas attack. Opposition leader Yair Lapid said Netanyahu lost the war and collapsed at the moment of truth. 1 month after the World Health Organization declared Congo's Ebola outbreak an international emergency, the number of confirmed cases has reached 800, with warnings that the outbreak could become the worst on record. Tens of thousands of contacts remain untraced. A WHO report found roughly a third of new case alerts in the worst-hit province of Ituri were going unanswered. Burial and decontamination teams also say they have only about 15% of the personnel and 7% of the vehicles they need. Dozens of medics have caught the Bundibugyo strain, for which there is no proven vaccine or treatment. U.S. President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi held their first meeting since early 2025 at the G7 summit in France on Wednesday, discussing trade deals and the safety of Indian sailors in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump called Modi a, quote, tough negotiator and said he would visit India in the future. The two leaders last met in February 2025, but ties have since deteriorated over high U.S. tariffs on Indian goods and Washington's closeness with India's rival, Pakistan. Relations were further strained by killing of 3 Indian sailors in the U.S. Navy attacks on commercial ships. Modi told Trump the safety of Indian seafarers in the Hormuz region was of utmost importance and should receive priority in implementing the Iran peace agreement. Soccer superstars Lionel Messi, Erling Haaland, and Kylian Mbappe all scored in Tuesday's World Cup matches. Messi scored his first World Cup hat-trick in Argentina's 3-0 win over Algeria, drawing level with the tournament's all-time record scorer Miroslav Klose on 16 goals. The Argentine scored his first World Cup goal on the same date 20 years earlier when he was 18. Meanwhile, Mbappe netted twice in France's 3-1 win over Senegal to become his country's all-time top scorer with 58 goals. Haaland and England's Harry Kane also scored 2 goals in their opening games. Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
Summer heat continues to build across the country today. Many of us need to stay prepared for both the heat and passing showers again. The first heat advisories of the season have been issued for parts of Daegu and Gyeongsang-do provinces. Then passing showers are expected for most of the inland regions, with 5 to 40 millimeters expected along with thunderstorms. And this afternoon's hot in Daegu will be getting up to 32 degrees Celsius, Daejeon at 31 degrees, then Daegu will be topping out at 32 degrees. The capital area will be under sizzling sunshine with very strong UV rays. Then some welcome news. The hot weather will ease with nationwide rain on Saturday.
Now that's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.